My main goal is high performance and getting people to perform to their best potential. We've got to restructure everything and we've got to retrain ourselves, our routines, our beliefs, and everything we've done we've got to redo. And if you don't shift, you're going to be left behind. People are saying, I don't have enough time. And I say, what's your happy thing? And making sure we're getting that instead of this grind all the time.
Welcome to episode 143 of Be The Drop, a weekly interview podcast sharing stories from people who inspire and motivate others to help you learn how to tell your story. I'm Amelia Veal, Director at Narrative Marketing and firm believer in the superpower of storytelling. As modern life becomes more complex and work pressures increase, stress and burnout are becoming common complaints. Quality of life isn't in the standard business vocabulary, but time management is. And according to this week's guests, this is one key element to achieving a manageable balance in your life. Alexandra Laws is a leading human performance coach who moved from optimal performance in athletics to teaching optimal performance in the corporate sector. Having won World Championships medals and assisted Olympic medal-winning athletes, Alex has proven her method with some of the world's highest achievers. In today's episode of Be The Drop, Alex demystifies optimal performance and she explains how mindfulness, discipline and time management are critical elements to achieve optimal performance and reduce stress. This is Alex's version of Be The Drop. Are you considering starting your own podcast? At Narrative Marketing, we deliver a full range of podcast production options. Or if you'd like help getting started to produce your own content, I also deliver podcast training programs. Hit the link in the show notes for more. Alex, thank you so much for joining me on our next episode of Be The Drop.
Thank you for having me.
To get us started, you've got an item of significance, and that's something that gives us a little bit of context about you, your story, and what you're going to share with us today.
Yeah, my items of significance is a sheepskin. And we actually grew up with them here in Australia. However, I don't use mine like we did back in the days, putting babies on it. Mine is my meditation mat. And then it's been all around the world with me, doing some amazing adventures.
So tell us then, how does this mat and your meditation, how is that connected with your business journey and the path you've been on?
I started seriously meditating about 8 years ago, and it has shifted absolutely everything on how I think, not personally, but also business-wise with my clients. Really got me in touch with my intuition, which is one of the most powerful guidances I found I now have. And so I've just dived deeper and deeper into this. And so I meditate every morning without fail because it sets the tone for the day. So there's a component not only for myself here, but actually there's a great story. Do you want me to tell you?
Yes, we love stories.
Okay, so I was a swimmer here in Australia in the 80s when the 13 to 14-year-old age group, which I was in, was winning the Olympic gold medals. So in year 12, I went and competed in the first secondary school's triathlon and I won it. And then the following year, while I was doing my year 12, I qualified for the Commonwealth Games. So that was my whole path there. I started doing really, really well with that. Went on to represent Australia 4 times. Went and lived in Europe, competed there, and then I ended up in the US. And I just loved it there. And then I was forced to retire through health reasons, actually, and needed to figure out why I've gone from, being in the top of the world to not being able to, function. And that's kind of been a quest I've been on. I studied exercise kinesiology and then just started getting all these elite athletes, and I kept them injury-free. Then started working with corporates and people in the entertainment industry because they needed to function well because the pressure's pretty horrendous in that industry. And so my main goal is high performance and getting people to perform to their best potential. And with stress levels being pretty high now, people are needing it more.
Yeah. So that then brings you back round. You're back in Adelaide, back in Australia now, and you're working with people in, helping with this reduce stress, helping them be their best. Now I'm going to read this one. You are working with them and their neural reserve. Is that right? And that's something that helps, increase positive impact or, their potential. Please explain that for us.
Well, neuroreserve was a term that I came up with, and it was based on what I did with my athletes. If they had neuroreserve, then when they went into the competition, they were able to then to focus on the skills and the cognitive demand of the sport that you can't really replicate in training. For instance, I was just telling you earlier about working with Danny Wade to jump the Great Wall of China. Well, we can't practice jumping the Great Wall of China in the backyard, but I had to make sure he had enough neural reserve to be able to do that feat, because death was an option if we didn't get it all right. So neural reserve is meeting your physical, mental and emotional demands of the sport, competition, assignment, whatever. So you actually have energy left over. You don't go in there and just get absolutely pulverized and then you limp home and you slump on the couch. It's actually exceeding that. And I've always done that with my athletes. Now I want to do it with corporate.
Yeah. So how do you help top up and build those reserves?
Yeah. I've found that there's 4 key areas for optimal performance. And if you get all those going right, then you've got a good chance of keeping your neural reserve up. And that's, nutrition, movement and energy, restorative and regenerative, that's recovering, and then mindfulness and awareness. So there's like 4 components, and everyone's going to be different in each area depending just on their makeup, their DNA, a lot of different things. And then on top of that, I biohack all of them, in that I take really fast and effective techniques that turn the dial super, super quick, because no one's got much time anymore. But how do we turn the dial as quickly as possible and as quickly and as efficiently as possible to get the outcomes that we want? So that's what I've put together.
Yeah. And you're working with a whole range of corporates, businesses. Is it tailored towards a specific industry? How does it work? Where does it apply? I
started going more high executives because they are the ones that need to lead the teams. Banking's another one because it's, high stakes. So yeah, it's a lot of different industries I'm finding.
Yeah. And potentially what you're doing is sort of outside of people's understanding, or it's outside of traditional service delivery. How do you communicate that in a way that people can understand?
That's a great question, because that's probably been the hardest thing I've had to do coming back here. The way I communicated in the States was, firstly, I never had to speak about what I did. My work did all the talking. Here it's completely different. So I've had to find how to communicate. However, the space is moving so quickly, and I've just noticed in the last 6 to 8 months, the space is coming up to the information I'm putting out there. And people are recognising it now more so than ever. The last 3-4 years, mental health is one of the biggest concerns right now, especially amongst men, middle age. And that's been a big shift. So now the science is proving all that. Yet what I love is a lot of the techniques I use are quite ancient, and they've been proven for hundreds of years. And now science is like, meditation does this, and this to the brain, and it does this. And I love all that. So I kind of mix, ancient wisdom with modern science. I like that component. But yeah, the communication part's hard, and I need to get people when they're ready.
Well, and timing is such a critical aspect in business.
It is.
And I often repeat to myself, no doesn't mean never.
Right.
It just means not right now.
Yeah, I agree.
So it is about, maintaining that. So, not necessarily losing heart, if people say no, it just means that's not the right fit right now.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes that's easier said than done, right?
It is, because I wasn't used to it. And it's actually taught me to really analyse how I got the results, whereas I just did everything very organically, very intuitively, and my focus was keeping it, ahead of the curve, and making sure my athletes, my clients were getting the goals that they wanted.
And what are some of the biggest benefits that you see people get out of addressing these issues?
Happiness, less stress, just quality of life. I think that's the big one, and we haven't shifted it yet here. I've started seeing the shift in the States. If we don't shift it, that's when we're going to succumb to the stress and the mental illness. It's critical point right now. We've got to restructure everything, and we've got to retrain ourselves, our routines, our beliefs, and everything we've done, we've got to redo. And if you don't shift, you're going to be left behind. People are saying, I don't have enough time. That's the biggest one. And it's like creating a lifestyle where you do have time to do the things that you love, you're passionate about. And I say, what's your happy thing? and that's a non-addictive thing, right? But what's your happy thing, happy place? And making sure we're getting that instead of this grind all the time. It's not conducive.
No. And, I do hear that. And I have spoken to other guests about this concept, but it is training. You have to sort of train yourself to think that it's about the choices I make, and I can only spend my time once. So where do I choose to spend that? How does that apply in the workplace as well? What are those benefits? How does that have ramifications across the workplace?
I think you have to be really adaptable now, because you're getting things coming from you at multi-directions, right? So that's really hard. So the more we can actually change and be uncomfortable, the more quickly we can adapt to certain new situations, and then we can navigate ourselves much better. We like being super comfortable, and that's why I talk about some of my modalities of, I have a cold shower every single morning. Do I like it? Absolutely not. But, the benefits that it does to my body is huge. I meditate every morning without fail. So I'm constantly challenging myself to change as well. So when things come along, I try and be the tree that's rooted in the ground. I might sway, but I'm not going to go off with a storm. When you can be rooted in the ground, then you can just navigate yourself much better. And I think for corporate, that's huge because, timelines, budgets, there's so much going on. And then they've got a home life to deal with too.
Yeah. So do you actually work with people on time management, or is there other areas of their life that helps them?
I work on the physical, mental and emotional body. And when we get that going, then their time management gets better. So their brain gets better, they physically are better, and then they can actually be more effective in their work. So something that might take 4 hours to go through, they can bang it out in 2. Like when I sit down and work, I just smash stuff out and I give myself blocks. Anything more than a couple of hours, I get up and I do something, right? What were they saying? Our brain is doing 10,000 more synapses a day than it was a generation ago. The intensity of the work week, like a 40-hour work week 5 years ago, now a 40-hour work week, it's more intense. So now people who are doing 80, there's no way you can survive with that. Well, how do we get the work done? We've got to just lift everything up and start being super, super efficient.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily about more work time, but it's more efficiency within that time. Yeah. And I certainly feel that, like when I have more time or when I carve more time for physical exercise, which I really like, but, things get in the way. But I actually find it's the self-fulfilling sort of thing. Like the more exercise I do, the more energy I have, which I kind of think it's going to be the other way. Why does that actually make us, lead to more efficiencies?
Well, just on the physical component, what you do, one of the big things with that, it releases BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factors, and that helps our cognition. Obviously, movement gets blood flow, energy flow, and all of that. As I said, the model that we used to function out of just doesn't work anymore. We have to shift it. And it's moving so quickly. And a lot of people have a tough time shifting it.
So what would you be like if you just had to narrow it down to, say, 3 top things? What should people do if they're like, okay, even just to get started in this space? How do I
have a routine that you stick to every single morning?
Yep.
And every single day without fail, no excuses. Whatever it is, and it's going to be different for people, right? So I have mine, and a lot of people, I guide them on like what's important for them. Have to have a routine. When you fall off the bandwagon, being sick or whatever, you've got to get back on as soon as possible.
Yeah. So have your routine, stick to it.
Yeah.
And then 3, what do you reckon?
You have to have, within that, you have to have a mindfulness practice. That's the non-negotiable.
What classifies mindfulness practice? Because can my running be a mindfulness practice?
Absolutely, because you're in nature, especially where you are here. Mindfulness, some people can be walking on the beach barefoot. Some people can just be going and hiking in Blair National Park, around here. Being in nature is very grounding, so important. Explore what works for you, and that's why I try and give a bunch of different examples of people, and you'll know when it sits right with you. Also disconnecting from, obviously, computers and that, and having some quiet time to yourself, right? And going and being quiet within yourself, because if you're not listening within yourself, you're just reacting to everyone else's projections.
I'm really interested in this idea of how you project yourself and the impact on others, and why you need to
Why do you need to consider that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have this awesome, this acronym that I came up with, and it's called Not Taking on Other People's Poop, POOP, which is projections, objections, opinions, and perceptions. If something's annoying you, or you're getting a certain response from people, what are you sending out, right? Instead of blaming everyone else, take some accountability.
It's such an important point that often gets missed in this conversation, because yes, we shouldn't take on board other people's crap, I say, or poop, but I think we don't necessarily take responsibility for what we're putting out there. And sometimes we're not even necessarily aware of it. There is an actual consciousness that you have to go through to think, what am I projecting?
Right, which is why one of those quadrants I call mindfulness and awareness. Mindfulness, doing a mindfulness practice, but awareness, how are you projecting yourself onto others, to the planet, to how are you projecting yourself? Because it's going to come back.
Yes.
And a lot of people have a tough time with that.
Thank you so much, Alex, for joining me. In conclusion, though, you're not quite off the hook. I'd like to finish with Alex's Be the Drop tip. Now, so that is your top tip for communicating and connecting and creating influence.
I'd have to go with what we just kind of said, is the more people that can be aware of how they're projecting themselves, the more harmonious we can be and the more we can achieve. And how can we do it collectively? And that's a big movement with that at the moment, I think, on the planet in general. Yeah. There's a big movement with it in the States. And it's just all getting along.
Yeah. And, surely only positive things can come from that.
I've seen it. It's only positive things. So, yeah, I would say that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Be the Drop. Don't forget to subscribe in order to ensure you never miss out on one of our weekly episodes. Be the Drop is produced by Narrative Marketing, where we believe that stories connect individuals and that powerful storytelling can positively impact the world. To unleash your storytelling superpower, visit narrativemarketing.com.au or check out our social links in the show notes. To contact me directly with any specific comments you have, you can email me via amelia@narrativemarketing.com.au. And don't forget that whilst a task or challenge may seem overwhelming, a waterfall begins with one drop. And look what comes from that.